And as the two countries mark half a century of diplomatic ties, trade and investment relations taking center stage. China has been Malaysia's largest trading partner for 15 consecutive years now, with total trade in 2023 reaching nearly $100 billion. And in that same year, Beijing also regained the top position as the largest source of foreign direct investment in the Southeast Asian country, with realized investments amounting to $18.5 billion. China has played a large role in Malaysia's structural transformation on the back of multiple projects under the Belt and Road Initiative. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim last year lauded the BRI for creating job opportunities and building infrastructure in the country. The East Coast Rail Link, for one, is a $10.6 billion project under the BRI. This connects Malaysia's less developed region on the East Coast to the economic heartland on the West Coast. It's expected to enhance connectivity and bring more balanced growth to Malaysia. And more analysis on this, we're joined by O.A. San. He's Senior Fellow from the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. Thanks so much for joining us this evening, Dr. O. Now, we just heard the string of deals on cooperation signed between Malaysia and China's Premier. He's in Malaysia right now. Now, if we look the scale of these deals, if we look back last year, Prime Minister Anwar travelled to China twice. There was a string of MOUs signed then, amounting to about $40 billion. Has any of that materialized if we look at a sign of what might come out of these deals signed today between Malaysia and China?
Well, among those deals which realized from Prime Minister Anwar's previous trips to China would be, for example, the expansion of the proton factory in the state of Perak. I think those signed between primarily the private companies of China and Malaysia. I think a lot of details will still need to be worked out. And I think similarly for this particular trip by the Chinese premier, those which are signed between Malaysian GLCs and perhaps China SOEs, I think would take much priority over those signed between, let's say, the small and medium enterprises of both countries.
So in other words, we need to be looking very carefully at the details of these deals and what you've seen right now from the existing deals signed today. Are they large in scale? Are they significant?
Well, they are large scale, and they are, shall we say, rather high tech and with so-called green and sustainable elements and so on. But of course, I think a lot of us are looking forward to the conclusion of, for example, the ECRL, which you mentioned, and even this sort of rail link between the satellite terminals and the manned terminal of KLIA. We hope that these mainly infrastructural projects could lay the groundwork for further economic development in Malaysia.
In fact, Malaysia is looking at these economic deals and seeing them as reason to, for example, play a little softer on other issues such as security issues. This is, of course, relative to other countries within ASEAN, such as the Philippines. Now, what our correspondent mentioned earlier on this bulletin, so for example, on the South China Sea, which was brought up in talks this morning between the two prime ministers, Mofa, that's China's Minister of Foreign Affairs, that statement saying China wants to resolve this amicably, independently and bilaterally. Prime Minister Anwar has made it very clear that this issue must go through ASEAN. So already on this, there is difference. Of course, Prime Minister Anwar's office will release its statement tomorrow after Premier Lee leaves Malaysia. But given the existing difference in opinion, do you expect any kind of real resolution on the South China Sea between China and Malaysia?
Well, certainly not in the short time frame. It is no secret that China and a number of Southeast Asian countries, they have vastly different positions regarding territory, regarding sovereignty on South China Sea. And between Malaysia and China, Malaysia will always have to waive this sort of, shall we say, guarding our sovereignty on South China Sea. on the one hand, versus the tremendous economic interest that is a result of interaction with China. As you also mentioned just now, this amounts to really huge volumes, both in terms of trade and investment. So, well, I wouldn't say we will go soft on South China Sea, but perhaps the position would not be as strong as, let's say, the Philippines or Vietnam here.
Apart from this tremendous economic interest, Malaysia perhaps more than other countries, the issue of the war in Gaza weighs strongly, perhaps more strongly with Malaysia than perhaps other countries within this region. So, for example, how Malaysia balances relations between China and the United States, that war in Gaza is a very big factor in that.
Well, indeed, I think there's also news that Malaysia will be joining the BRICS grouping of country. I think that has to do with, number one, trying to, in a sense, please China in order to elicit, hopefully, more trade and investment with and from China on the one hand. And on the other hand, it is also, I think, an expression of Malaysia's displeasure of many Western powers, shall we say, almost unconditional support of Israel in the Middle Eastern conflict. And perhaps one-upping is too strong a term, but I think that certainly plays a factor into Malaysia making such a decision in joining that grouping of country, which, well, some would say would be decidedly anti-Western.
Also, a very quick final question, Dr. Oh, what might cause Malaysia to perhaps reconsider its current relative pivot to Beijing?
Well, I think the Western powers, and especially the United States, would have to redouble its effort in terms of even just returning to its previous positions or having high volume of trade with and also investment into Malaysia. And with that, I would not be surprised if Malaysia repivot itself back to the Western camp. For the moment, I think it perceives that to be in conjunction with China will bring about more national interests and especially economic ones.
Thanks for joining us this evening, Dr. Oh San, Senior Fellow from the Singapore Institute of International Affairs.